Before you hit play, make sure you're subscribed, because what you're about to hear is one of the darkest, most uncontrollable stories ever locked behind prison walls. And trust me, you won't believe how far this one man went and how the system let it happen again and again. The corridor of Block D reeked of bleach and fear, the kind of smell that clings to concrete after a riot. Cameras flickered, doors buzzed open and shut, and somewhere deep inside, a voice screamed for help, cut short by the echo of a metal tray crashing to the floor. They called him Darius, the Monster Cole, a name whispered across every tier in Ridgway State Penitentiary, a maximum security prison buried in the heart of Pennsylvania. 50 attacks. Guards, inmates, even medical staff. No one was safe. He'd been transferred 9 times, isolated twice, and still, no one could stop him. The story begins on a humid August morning. Officer Ray Mendoza had drawn the short straw, cell inspection duty in Darius's block. It was supposed to be routine. Check the bunks, log the contraband, move on. But as he stepped into cell 23, the air turned heavy. The cell looked too clean. The sheets folded. The sink spotless. Only the faint hum of fluorescent lights broke the silence. Then Ray saw it, etched into the metal wall beside the bunk, dozens of tally marks. Not random scratches. Each line represented someone he'd attacked. 50 tallies and one half finished. Before Ray could radio in, a shadow moved behind him. A thin, wiry figure, eyes wild, mouth curved into a grin that didn't belong to a sane man. 51, Darius whispered. The lights went out. When power returned, chaos exploded through Ridgway. Sirens screamed, gates slammed, and cell doors clanged in confusion. Darius was gone, vanished from his locked cell like smoke. The prison entered lockdown, but by the time they restored order, one officer was missing. That was the night Ridgway realized something horrifying. The monster wasn't escaping the system. He was thriving inside it. Long before he was a prison legend, Darius Cole was just another inmate serving a 20-year sentence for aggravated assault. But inside those walls, something in him shifted. Rumors say it started after a brutal fight in the yard. Others claim it was revenge against corrupt guards. Whatever triggered it, the result was the same: a man who fed on chaos. By the time Warden Harold Dempsey arrived that summer, Darius had become a living myth. Inmates refused to cross paths with him. Guards avoided eye contact. Even the cameras turned away, often malfunctioning when he was near. But the real story, the one the public never heard, started 2 months before that blackout. And it began with a deal Darius made, one that would pit him against not just the prison, but the people running it. Because behind every monster, there's someone who created him. The morning after the blackout, Ridgway State Penitentiary felt like a war zone. Every corridor hummed with panic. Guards barked orders. Medical teams rushed stretchers past smeared walls, and the warden's office stayed sealed shut. No press, no calls, only silence. When the lights finally came back, they found Officer Ray Mendoza in the laundry bay. Barely conscious, his wrists zip-tied, his shirt drenched in his own blood. On the floor beside him was a message written in detergent dust. "This place made me. Don't pretend it didn't." That was the 50th attack. And somehow, Darius Cole was still alive, breathing, laughing, pacing behind his bars as if he hadn't just turned the whole prison upside down. Warden Harold Dempsey had seen everything in his 25 years at Ridgway. Riots, smuggling rings, suicides, and guard corruption so thick it stank through the vents. But Cole was different. The man had no allies, no gang, no outside protection. And yet, somehow, he was untouchable. Dempsey watched him through the surveillance feed that night. Darius sat cross-legged on the floor of his cell, head tilted toward the camera, smiling faintly. He didn't blink for minutes at a time. When Dempsey finally entered the observation room, Deputy Officer Lang tried to warn him. "Sir, he's not like the others. You talk to him, you feed into it." But Dempsey ignored him. "If I can control Cole, I can control this whole damn prison." So he made a deal. It began in whispers in the dead hours of night when the halls went still. Cole was offered privileges, an hour of freedom in the abandoned workshop wing, a double ration, even limited access to the prison library. In return, he'd keep the peace. No fights, no chaos. At least, that was the plan. For a few weeks, it worked. The prison calmed down. Inmates started sleeping again. The warden's numbers looked good. Reports of violence dropped by half. Dempsey even called it behavioral reform through incentivization. But the truth was darker. Cole wasn't reforming. He was recruiting. Inside Ridgeway, there were unwritten rules, alliances carved from desperation. You could trade cigarettes, food, or protection. But Darius offered something else entirely: revenge. He whispered to the lifers, the forgotten ones serving 40 years or more. He promised them a way out, not freedom, but power. The kind of power that terrified even the guards. By the time the warden realized what was happening, it was too late. Cameras caught glimpses of inmates moving in patterns, signals traded during mealtime, codes scratched under bunks. Darius wasn't working alone anymore. He had built a quiet army, one that waited, patient and invisible, inside the walls. And then came the incident in the East Wing. It started with an alarm that wasn't real. A false trigger in the control booth opened several cell doors at once. 5 inmates stepped out, calm, deliberate. They didn't run or fight. They just walked straight to the administrative hallway. Minutes later, every light in the East Block flickered red. Guards scrambled, but the damage was already done. When they reviewed the footage, Darius was seen nowhere near the scene. But his name was written across every act. The orchestrator who never moved. The ghost who controlled chaos with silence. Late that night, the warden returned to his office, shaken. On his desk, there was a folder he hadn't seen before. Unmarked, sealed with prison tape. Inside were black and white photos, bruised inmates, broken cameras, missing keys, and a note scrawled in jagged handwriting. You wanted control. Now you have to earn it. Dempsey froze. The photos weren't new. They were from incidents he'd covered up months earlier. Only a handful of people knew about them. Darius Cole was one of them. The next morning, the warden summoned Cole to his office for the first time. Guards cuffed him, shackled his ankles, and led him down the echoing hall. Cole walked like a man on a red carpet, grinning, whispering something only he could hear. When the door closed, Dempsey leaned forward. What do you want from me? Cole's smile didn't fade. I already have it, he said softly. You gave me a prison. I just made it mine. From that day forward, Ridgeway changed forever. Cells went quiet when Darius passed. Guards double-locked every gate. And the warden, once the symbol of control, started drinking on the job. Because deep down, he knew something every man in Ridgeway was starting to realize. Darius Cole wasn't trying to escape the prison. He was trying to own it. There are nights inside a prison when time stops, when the air feels charged, and every sound echoes like a warning. Ridgeway had one of those nights, and it began with a single flicker of light. It was 2:47 a.m., a time when most inmates were half asleep, and the night guards did their slow, silent rounds. The hum of fluorescent bulbs painted the corridors pale blue. Nothing unusual, nothing loud. But in cell block E, someone was awake. A match struck. A single flame glowed in the dark, reflected in Darius Cole's eyes. He wasn't supposed to have matches. He wasn't supposed to have anything. Yet somehow, the man who'd been stripped of everything, possessions, freedom, identity, was now sitting cross-legged, whispering to the flame like it was listening. The match burned out. He lit another, and another. Each flame revealed pieces of writing carved into the wall. I am the system. At 3:05 a.m., the first alarm blared. A storage room near the east wing burst into flames. Sprinklers kicked in, water pouring like rain through rusted vents. Smoke filled the corridor, and guards scrambled for keys and gas masks. But what no one realized at that moment was that the fire wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to blind. Down in the control room, Officer Travis Lane was trying to reboot the surveillance grid when the screens started blinking in sequence, cell by cell, hallway by hallway, until only one feed remained, cell 23. There sat Darius Cole, hands resting calmly on his knees, head tilted, smiling straight into the camera. Behind him, written in black marker across the concrete wall, were 3 chilling words. Watch. It. Burn. Then the screen went dark. By 3:18 a.m., half the prison was in blackout. Doors jammed. Radios dead. The emergency power grid failed completely. The fire had triggered something deeper, a breach in Ridgway's old electrical system. And as guards rushed to control the chaos, every cell door in Block D clicked open. It wasn't a full riot. Not yet. It was worse, a silence before violence. The prisoners didn't yell or run. They walked, slowly, purposefully, toward one destination, the administration wing. Upstairs, Warden Dempsey was locked in his office, watching the flames crawl across the CCTV feed. He could feel the heat rising through the floorboards, could hear the faint rhythm of boots approaching in unison. He knew who was behind it. He also knew that none of this was spontaneous. Cole had planned everything. The electrical failure, the door mechanisms, even the timing of the sprinkler delay. It was surgical, calculated. Dempsey reached for his drawer, pulled out his revolver, and muttered to himself, "This ends tonight." Meanwhile, in the yard, the inferno painted the prison walls a hellish orange. Sirens wailed in the distance, but no backup came. Ridgway was too remote, too isolated. Help would take hours. Inside the chaos, a young guard named Eli Ramos, only 6 months into the job, found himself trapped in the infirmary. He could barely breathe. Smoke stung his eyes. Through the haze, he saw a shape move, tall, lean, familiar. "Mr. Cole," Eli whispered, terrified. Darius stepped forward, his cuffs dangling from one wrist, keys glinting in his hand. "You should leave," he said calmly. "I can't. The gates are sealed." "Then don't move." And before Eli could react, Darius grabbed him, pulled it behind a steel cabinet, and seconds later, the door exploded open, a blast of heat and noise that sent glass raining down. When Eli looked up again, Darius was gone. All that was left was his voice echoing faintly down the corridor. Freedom doesn't always mean leaving, rookie. By 4:02 a.m., the fire had spread through 3 blocks. Inmates were herded to containment zones. Guards shouted conflicting orders. But amid the confusion, something even more disturbing surfaced. The prison's server room had been breached. All security footage from the last 6 months deleted. Every record of disciplinary action destroyed. Every report involving Darius Cole wiped clean. It was as if the man never existed. When dawn broke, Ridgway was nothing but smoke and ruin. The fire crews arrived too late to save most of the East Wing. 42 inmates injured, 2 guards missing, and Darius Cole, found in the chapel, kneeling before the altar, hands folded like a saint. Unburned, untouched. When they dragged him out, he looked up at the warden and smiled. "I told you, Harold, I don't escape prisons. I build them." That was the night the media dubbed the fire in silence. The prison system buried it under technical reports, electrical malfunctions, and procedural jargon. But the men who lived through it, guards, inmates, doctors, they knew the truth. The fire didn't destroy Ridgway. It exposed it. And somewhere, deep in solitary, Darius Cole waited for his next move. Because the game wasn't over. It had just begun. Ridgway was quiet again. Too quiet. 3 weeks had passed since the night of fire and silence, and the prison still smelled of smoke and chemicals. Walls blackened. Cameras replaced. Guards rotated every 2 hours. But no one really felt safe. Not the inmates, not the staff, not even the warden. The fire had ended, but something far worse had begun. Darius Cole was moved to Solitary Confinement Unit 9, a place meant for ghosts. 23 hours a day in a concrete box with nothing but a steel bed, a flickering light, and a small slit for meals. It was where prisoners went to vanish. Warden Dempsey called it containment. The guards called it the tomb. For the first few days, Cole didn't speak. He didn't eat. He just sat there, motionless, staring at the wall like it was whispering to him. The psychiatrist assigned to monitor him, Dr. Ellen Marks, described him as lucid but unervingly calm. When she asked him why he wasn't angry or afraid, Cole replied, "Why would I be? You can't lock away something that already lives inside the walls." Meanwhile, Dempsey had a new problem. The Department of Corrections had sent an external investigator to Ridgway. Agent Michael Hensley, a former prison intelligence officer. He was cold, methodical, and known for one thing: exposing corruption from the inside. The first thing he noticed was the missing footage. The second was the falsified reports. But the third, that's what made his skin crawl. In every document referencing Darius Cole, someone had added strange handwritten notes in the margins. He speaks to them. Stop night shift at 3 a.m. The walls listen. When Hensley asked who wrote them, the admin staff swore those lines weren't there before the fire. By the end of his second week, the investigator requested access to Cole's cell. Dempsey refused at first, then agreed, but only under strict watch. When they entered the solitary wing, the air was icy. The hum of the lights buzzed faintly, and every few seconds there was a click, the sound of metal expanding in the cold. Cole sat cross-legged on the floor, shirtless, his skin pale under the harsh white light. "You've been busy," Hensley said, dropping a file on the floor. "Deleting files, manipulating guards, starting fires. What's your endgame?" Cole didn't look up. "You think I did all that for an endgame? You still don't understand." "Then enlighten me." Finally, Cole met his eyes, and for a brief moment, Hensley saw something terrifying. Not madness, but intent. "I didn't start the fire," Cole whispered. "The prison did." After the visit, Hensley reviewed the audio logs recorded from solitary. That's when he heard it, the thing that would haunt him for years. Between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., faint voices could be heard over Cole's intercom feed. Not guards, not inmates, just whispers, layered, low, overlapping. Sometimes they repeated words. Sometimes they laughed. But Cole never spoke. When Hensley confronted the technical team, they swore the audio line was isolated, not connected to any other system. "Then where are the voices coming from?" he demanded. No one answered. By the end of that month, Dr. Marks began documenting strange behavior among staff members assigned to the solitary wing. Gardner Vasquez claimed she heard someone calling her name through the ventilation shafts. Officer Tanner Boyd refused to go near cell 9 altogether. The warden brushed it off as paranoia, side effects of trauma from the fire. But when Vasquez quit suddenly, leaving behind her badge and a single note that read, "He's not alone in there," Dempsey began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, something unnatural was happening. Not supernatural, but something engineered. Agent Hensley pressed harder. He began investigating Cole's early prison years before Ridgeway. That's when he uncovered something hidden deep in state archives. Darius had been part of a psychological control experiment at Halvern Correctional Facility, a defunct prison shut down after allegations of inmate mind conditioning. Files suggested Darius was one of the test subjects. The purpose: to see if human aggression could be amplified or suppressed through isolation and sensory manipulation. Dempsey read the report twice, stunned. Cole wasn't born a monster. He was made into one. Hensley returned to confront him again. "They turned you into this," he said, pacing outside the cell. Cole smiled faintly. "No, they tried to build control. But they failed. All they did was teach me how to use it." "Use it for what?" Cole leaned forward, pressing his forehead against the glass. His voice was low, almost gentle, to remind them that cages don't change people. They just teach you how to lock others inside. That same night, the solitary power grid tripped again. For exactly 7 minutes, the lights went black. When they came back, cell 9 was empty. No broken locks. No open doors. No footprints. Just a trail of tally marks etched across the wall. Each line uneven, shaky, as if carved in a hurry. There were 51, and beneath them, scrawled in blood-red paint, a message. The silence spreads. When Warden Dempsey arrived at the scene, his hands trembled. The guards were hysterical. No one knew how he escaped, or if he even did. But one thing was certain: Darius Cole wasn't inside Ridgeway anymore. He was beneath it. The morning after Darius Cole vanished, Ridgeway Prison became a city under siege. Every gate sealed, every hallway searched, every guard accounted for. Yet, somehow there was no trace. No broken cameras, no forced locks, no signs of struggle. It was as if Cole had simply dissolved into the concrete. And then, a janitor found the hole. It was behind the old storage unit in Block F, a wing shut down years earlier after a ceiling collapse. Dust covered everything, cots, crates, forgotten records. No one had been in there for years. The janitor noticed a faint draft coming from beneath the floor. When he pulled away a sheet of metal, he revealed a square hatch, rusted shut. The hinges screamed when they forced it open. Below, it was a narrow tunnel, wide enough for one man to crawl through. And on the walls, smudges of red chalk, arrows pointing forward, and the letters HCF. Warden Dempsey's blood ran cold when he heard. HCF, Halvern Correctional Facility. By the time Agent Hensley arrived, a small task team had already entered the tunnel. They found electrical wiring, old ventilation pipes, and marks, fingertip scratches, as if someone had clawed their way through the dirt. But the deeper they went, the stranger it became. At about 200 feet, they found old stone walls instead of soil. The tunnel widened into a chamber, part of an abandoned sublevel no one had records of. The air was thick, damp, humming faintly with something mechanical. In the middle of that chamber stood a metal door, welded shut and stamped with an old state logo. When they cut it open, a wave of cold air hit them. Inside were rows of rusted beds, restraints still attached. Clipboards hung beside each cot, data sheets filled with test numbers, notes about behavior modification, isolation response, and one repeated name. D. Cole. The realization hit Hensley hard. Ridgeway wasn't built over old farmland like the official record said. It was built on top of Halvern's ruins. The same place that had turned Darius Cole into what he was. The same place he'd been trying to reach all along. While investigators scoured the tunnels, Dempsey received an unmarked envelope on his desk. Inside was a single photo, grainy, black and white, clearly from a security feed. It showed Darius standing in the tunnel, facing the camera, eyes calm, a faint smile on his lips. Behind him, written in chalk across the wall, were 5 words. "We never closed the program." The warden's heart pounded as he called Hensley. "There's something you need to see," he said. But before he could send the photo, the prison lights flickered again. 3 long pulses, the same pattern from the night of the fire. Down below, the search team's radios cut out. In the tunnel, Sergeant Tom Ridge led the sweep forward. He could hear dripping water and the distant hum of machinery. When his flashlight caught movement ahead, he raised his weapon. "Freeze!" he shouted. The figure didn't move. It was a mannequin, or at least it looked like one at first. Pale, rigid, strapped to a chair, wearing an old inmate uniform. Its head tilted to the side, mouth slightly open, eyes glassy. Then they realized it wasn't plastic. It was a body. Beside it lay a folder labeled Project Echo, Final Phase. Inside were pages of data, including a final entry dated 6 years before the fire. Subject number 12, Darius Cole. Aggression patterns, amplified. Isolation period, indefinite. Termination protocol, suspended by order of state corrections. Hensley read it twice. Then he noticed something else. At the bottom of the page, a signature. Harold Dempsey. The warden froze when confronted. His voice cracked. "I didn't start it. I was told to continue it. They said it would make them controllable, manageable. I never thought it would make monsters," Hensley snapped. But before the argument could continue, the intercoms across the prison crackled to life. A distorted voice filled the halls. Low, slow, deliberate. "Control is a choice," it said. "Freedom is a test." Every light in Ridgeway went out. When they came back, chaos erupted. Cell doors jammed open. Guards screamed through the radio. And through the speakers, that same calm voice returned. "You buried me under your prison," it whispered. "Now you can live inside mine." The line went dead. By dawn, the tunnel team was gone, vanished. Only their helmets were found, lights still blinking weakly in the dark. The warden resigned 2 days later. Agent Hensley stayed behind, determined to uncover what really lay beyond that final chamber. But the deeper he dug into the files, the clearer it became. Darius Cole had never escaped. He'd activated something, and somewhere beneath Ridgeway, in those tunnels where the walls still whispered, his final words to the warden echoed in the dark. "You can't control what you don't understand." 3 days after the warden's resignation, Ridgeway State Penitentiary became a ghost fortress. No new inmates, no visitors, half the staff reassigned. But Agent Michael Hensley stayed. He couldn't leave, not after what he'd seen. Not after realizing that the monster everyone feared wasn't a man anymore. It was a system, a design, and Darius Cole was its blueprint. The prison's lower levels had been sealed off, but Hensley managed to get clearance. He told headquarters it was a structural inspection. In reality, he was going back into the tunnels. Alone, he equipped himself with a recorder, a flashlight, and a spare radio. The corridors were still scorched from the fire, and every step he took echoed like footsteps following close behind. He pressed record. Agent Hensley, Ridgeway Penitentiary, sublevel inspection, timestamp 2243. Objective: locate the remains of the Project Echo facility. Then he began to descend. The deeper he went, the colder it became. Water dripped from the ceiling. The concrete grew slick with mold. He followed the red chalk arrows left by the last search team, but halfway through, the arrows stopped. In their place, he found fresh markings. Different handwriting. A single phrase repeated over and over. Down is not out. Hensley's pulse quickened. The tunnel stretched ahead like a throat swallowing light. His flashlight flickered. The radio hissed. Then, through the static, a voice came through, faint, distorted, but unmistakable. Agent Hensley. He froze. Who is this? He whispered. Silence. Then again, clearer this time. Down is not out. He pressed forward until he reached the chamber where the team had disappeared. The air was heavy, almost metallic. He could smell rust, old blood, and electricity. The room was the same. Metal beds, empty restraints, but something new was there. A tape recorder sitting in the center of the floor. Its red light blinking. He crouched, hit play. The tape hissed, then a voice calm, confident. Darius Cole. Control is repetition. They thought pain would break us, but pain teaches pattern. They wanted obedience. I gave them evolution. The tape crackled. You can't cage thought, agent. It moves through systems, through wires, through memory. I was never trying to escape. I was trying to integrate. Then static swallowed the rest. Hensley looked around the chamber again, and that's when he saw the cables. Thick, black conduits running along the ceiling and vanishing into a sealed metal door at the back. The label read, Core Access, Authorized Personnel Only. He forced it open. The smell hit him first, ozone and decay. Inside was a small control room, still powered somehow. Screens flickered with distorted camera feeds. Hallways, cells, even the warden's old office. And on every monitor, Darius Cole's face appeared for a single frame at a time. Not moving, just watching. On the desk was a stack of paper files, half-burnt but legible. Project Echo Phase 4, Cognitive Network Interface. The report's first line read, Subject demonstrates ability to influence system responses within the containment grid. Neural resonance detected between subject brainwaves and electronic frequencies. Hensley felt his throat tighten. Cole wasn't just manipulating people anymore. He was inside Ridgeway's infrastructure. Suddenly, the intercom clicked on. Agent Hensley, the voice said softly, I told you control is a choice. He spun around. No one there. Where are you, Cole? Laughter, faint and distant. I'm where I belong. Everywhere. Then every monitor in the room blinked once and began playing old footage of Darius sitting in his cell, whispering to the wall. Except this time, Hensley noticed something in the reflection behind him. A technician monitoring data time-stamped years before the fire. He zoomed in on the name tag. H. Dempsey. The warden wasn't just continuing the experiment. He was part of it from the beginning. As Hensley backed away from the screens, alarms began to blare. The lights dimmed, and a low vibration rolled through the tunnel. The door slammed shut. His radio died. The temperature dropped, and from the dark came the sound of metal scraping, slow, deliberate, circling the room. He raised his flashlight. The beam caught a reflection on the far wall, writing in red dust. Welcome to Echo. The screens flickered one final time. Darius appeared again, closer now, his eyes looking directly into the camera as if staring through the lens and straight into Hensley's soul. They made me to obey. Now I make them remember. Then the power cut out completely. For the next 48 hours, no one heard from Agent Hensley. The rescue team found his recorder lying beside the sealed core door. The last thing it captured was his voice, quiet, trembling. He's not gone. He's part of the system. He's the system. When they reopened Ridgeway weeks later, the control systems behaved strangely. Cameras would turn themselves on. Doors would lock at random. Intercoms whispered fragments of words during night shifts. And sometimes, guards swore they heard a voice over the speakers. Calm, low, unmistakable. Down is not out. The official report called it a data malfunction. But the men who worked the night shift at Ridgeway knew better. By the time the state sent a new warden, most of the staff had transferred out. The prison was running at half capacity. The south wing, Cole's old block, was permanently sealed. They said it was for renovations. No one went down there anymore. Except one man, Detective Ray Harlan, Hensley's old partner. He came with one purpose: to finish what Hensley started. To find out how a man could cause 50 violent attacks inside a maximum security prison and still stay untouchable. It was 3:17 a.m. when Harlan entered the old lower level. The corridors were silent except for the faint buzz of power lines still running through the walls. He carried a flashlight, a camera, and Hensley's recovered recorder. When he reached the sealed core access door, he stopped. The lock had been welded shut, but something was wrong. The weld was fresh. He touched the metal, still warm. Suddenly, his radio hissed. A voice, low and broken by static. Agent Hensley was right. Down is not out. Harlan froze. The signal was coming from inside the sealed room. He forced the door open. The same control room from the report. Dark, ruined, flickering with weak light. On one of the monitors, an old file was still playing. Darius Cole, Psychological Evaluation, 2010. Cole sat calm, expression unreadable, speaking to someone off-screen. I told him control isn't about fear, he said softly. It's about pattern. Once you know the pattern, you own the chaos. The screen glitched. Cole's face froze mid-sentence. Then another file opened on its own. Ridgeway Maintenance Log, October 24th. The footage showed an empty hallway from the night before. But in the corner of the frame, a silhouette moved, broad shoulders, shaven head, hands clasped behind his back. Harlan's stomach dropped. It was Darius Cole. But that couldn't be. He'd been dead for years. The computer beeped. A new window opened by itself. Lines of code, typing automatically, spelling out one sentence. Welcome back, detective. The door behind him slammed shut. Lights blinked in sequence, like something breathing through the circuits. Harlan shouted, "Who's there?" The intercom crackled. Cole's voice filled the room. 50 attacks wasn't violence, detective. It was resistance. They call me a monster because I refuse to vanish. But I'm not gone. I became the pulse that runs this place. Harlan backed toward the exit, but the screens lit up again, showing live feeds from every cell in Ridgeway. Inmates sleeping, pacing, whispering, and then one by one, each of them looked straight into the camera at the same time. Eyes wide, blank, unblinking. Cole spoke again, calm as ever. Control was never about the cage. It was about the connection. The monitors exploded into static. Sparks flew. The floor vibrated beneath Harlan's boots. He dropped the flashlight, and for a moment, everything went dark, until a faint red glow flickered from the far wall. Letters scrawled in dust. I am Ridgeway. By morning, the control systems went offline across the entire facility. Security logs erased. Cameras dead. When guards entered the tunnels later, the control room was empty. No trace of Harlan. No tape. No recorder. Only a single monitor still flickering, playing an old clip of Darius Cole sitting in his cell. He smiled faintly, looked up, and whispered one last line. You can't lock up what's already inside. Then the screen went black. 2 years later, Ridgeway Penitentiary was demolished. The state built a tech research center over the land. But workers reported strange glitches in the security systems. Doors opening by themselves. Alarms triggering with no cause. And sometimes, Late at night, the PA system would turn on, playing a single recorded phrase. Down is not out. And that was the story of Darius Cole, the man who turned control into chaos and became the ghost inside Ridgeway's walls. 50 attacks, 0 remorse, and a legacy that refuses to die. If you made it this far, you've just stared straight into the kind of darkness most people never come back from. Now I've got one question for you. What if Cole wasn't the only one? If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that like button right now, smash subscribe, and drop a comment below with Down is not out. Because next week, we go even deeper. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. Stay curious, stay safe, and remember, some monsters never leave the system.